Welcome to GSBA's Rapid Response, giving you the opportunity to ask questions with live answers. Today's immediate feedback comes directly from GSBA hospitality and tourism members, Alaska Airlines, Pike Brewing Company, and Space Needle, Chihuly Garden and Glass, discussing creative measures members in the hospitality and tourism industry are taking to ensure safety as we move forward with phased reopenings. My name is Joey Chapman. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I am the Membership Development Manager with GSBA and will be today's Rapid Response Moderator. Along with fellow GSBA staff tuning in, joining me today is Tareya Miller. Tareya uses she, her, hers pronouns and is the GSBA Membership and Program Manager. So how does Rapid Response work for you? Our format allows you to engage professionals with questions in the wake of COVID-19. Today, we are streaming both on Zoom and Facebook Live. So throughout the hour, feel free to ask questions of our guests in the Q&A features. Tareya and I will follow along, doing our best to ensure your questions get answers. When you log off of today's Rapid Response, be sure to take a moment and fill out the GSBA survey that will be presented on both Zoom and Facebook Live. So let's go ahead and welcome our guests. Today, we have Matt Thomason, Manager of Occupational Safety at Alaska Air Group, Gary Szeredy, Director of Restaurant Operations at Pike Brewing Company, and Randy Cote, Director of Business Development for Space Needle and Chihuly Garden and Glass. Thank you all for joining us today. Let's go ahead and get started. According to Community Marketing Insights, a leader in LGBTQ research, in a recent survey, they reported the LGBT community shares many of the COVID-19 health concerns as the American general public. What is clear is that LGBTQ travel patterns will begin and change this summer and fall. Destinations that can pivot and adjust to the new travel normal will be at best advantage to minimize negative impacts in their local tourism industry. As we begin today, I'd like to connect with each of you individually, lean into these new travel norms as associated with your tourism industries. Alaska Airlines. Alaska is a premier partner of Travel Out Seattle, which is a program of GSBA promoting LGBTQ and allied tourism to Seattle and throughout Washington state. Matt, you are Alaska Airlines and Air Group's Manager of Occupational Safety. What exactly does your position with Alaska entail?
Hi, thanks. I'm really excited to be here, by the way, and really proud that we're involved with Travel Out Seattle. So my job position, I'm responsible for employee safety, which includes OSHA compliance, injury reduction efforts for Alaska and Horizon employees. Part of those responsibilities is that I am also the liaison with the CDC and other local health officials for communicable disease situations that arise on aircraft. I'm working closely with them on our responses to this pandemic.
Matt, could you go ahead and just let us know a little bit more about the initial impact that the virus had with Alaska Airlines?
Yeah, absolutely. As everybody knows, it's had a devastating effect on the airline industry. We were actually watching and monitoring the outbreak in China starting about mid-January. We became involved at the national level with the CDC and FAA shortly after that. We created a COVID-19 task force and a response group as part of our emergency response plan shortly after that. In the first week of February, our group is focused on that safety, compliance, and building confidence of employees and guests. And yet, as you can remember, a lot of information was changing, sometimes up to multiple times a day. We chose a limited number of credible data sources to ensure that we minimized the issue of changing guidance as it was happening and the potential of developing conflicting policies and a whiplash effect. So we work with medical directors that we have who are infectious disease specialists at University of Washington Medical Center, and they help guide us along with the CDC guidelines and contacts that we work with. But we saw after that, we saw our demand fall upwards of 90%. And starting in April, it started to creep back up, and we're still far below anything that we've seen before. But so we're hoping and expecting and trying to build that confidence back up with guests as well as our employees.
We're definitely proud to have Alaska Airlines as a sponsor of Travel Out Seattle, and thankful that you're still flying, which is great. Let's go ahead and check in with Pike Brewing. So Gary, you are the Director of Restaurant Operations at Pike Brewing Company, and 2020 co-chair for GSBA's Tourism Advisory Board. First, could you go ahead and let us know about your exciting news that happened over the weekend?
Sure. So, well, the Pike Pub is actually open, so that's a good thing. We've been
That's
open.
very good.
It'll be our 4th day, so we're pretty excited about that.
Awesome.
If you're not familiar with Pike, we have 4 floors in the Pike Place Market. We have a production brewery, and then we have 2 restaurants. We have the Pike Pub, and we have Tankard and Ton, which is our seafood and oyster house. And so the actual brewery itself has been open this entire time, but both restaurants have been closed for the last 4.5 months. And so we are really excited to have the Pike Pub finally open.
Well, congratulations on that for sure. Again, could you go ahead and tell us a little bit more about the initial impact that the virus did have on Pike Brewing?
Sure. I mean, of course, it had a huge impact as in most of our industry. We closed just before the stay-at-home order came down. We about a week before. We closed right around when Tom Douglas restaurants closed. We knew it was coming just about a week before it happened, and it was tough for us. We laid off close to 100 employees, so that's a big chunk of the workforce. In hospitality workforce here in Seattle, and it was a bummer. So we've opened the pub now, and we're back to about 25 employees. So just as the effect that it has on our team and our family was really, really huge. But of course, now we're finally open and excited to start to do some business. But it has affected us financially, of course, hugely.
Definitely. Well, we're thankful that you were able to open this weekend, and hopefully you'll continue to definitely stay strong and get some more folks in through your doors. Randy, you are also a member of the GSBA Tourism Advisory Board. As Director of Business Development, you recently invited folks for an exclusive pre-opening training for both Space Needle and Chihuly Garden and Glass. We'll get more into the implementations about your reopening, to welcome folks back and safety protocols. But could you go ahead and let us know, what the initial impacts were from the virus, around the Seattle Center, and particularly the Space Needle and of course Chihuly Garden?
Yeah, again, just like Matt and Gary said, it's great to be here. Love talking about all this stuff with everyone. It's it's been a bummer on our industry for the last few months, but it feels like we're starting to turn a tide, and that feels great. So happy to be here to talk. Sort of the initial impacts, when you look at, the first outbreak at the assisted living facility in Kirkland happened on Saturday, the 29th of February. The first attraction, we're a part of a group called Puget Sound Attractions Council, which is an industry group made up of 32 attractions, through, basically from the San Juan Islands to Mount Rainier, and we share information and sort of what's going on. The first attraction to close their doors was the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation Discovery Center, which is right here at Seattle Center campus. They closed on March 5th, so that within a week of the outbreak. And then if you start looking, places like the Burke Museum at UW and MoHi and MoPop and Museum of Flight, Pacific Science Center, the aquarium, all of those closed on the 12th of March. And then our 2 attractions closed on March 13th. So until we started our sort of pre-opening testing and then, reopening to the public with limited capacity this past weekend, we were closed for, just over 4 months, including some of our busiest times of the year. So the sort of impact immediately was pretty swift. All of our, our size, just like Gary mentioned at the brewery and at the restaurant, right, we had a massive reduction in staff. Over 85% of our team was laid off in the month of March, leaving sort of just the skeleton crew in position, the sort of reopening group that could get us sort of through this hibernation period, plan to reopen and get us open. And then it's been so great the last few weeks as we've been able to welcome back so many of our team members. We have a lot of people that have worked here for 10, 20, 30 years even. And so for a lot of those people, it was 4 months of not seeing them, but now they're back. They're doing what they love. They get to see our guests. We get to be together in a safe environment with all the restrictions in place, which we'll talk about later. So yeah, definitely huge impact. The campus here would normally be very busy with locals on spring breaks, with the Folk Life Festival over Memorial Day weekend, the Bite of Seattle in mid-July, all the cruise ship passengers throughout the whole summer from April to September. And it's really just folks who live in Belltown and Lower Queen Anne walking their dogs was the only people you'd see in the months of April, May, and June. So it's good to see a little bit of life back at the center.
No, that is great. Wonderful for locals to be able to take advantage of the time and the space, but we do love the sounds and the smells that come from the Seattle Center that just make us happy. So excited for your ventures in returning to reopening. Matt, Travel Out Seattle is eager to help promote and welcome LGBTQ allied travelers back to our region when the time is right. Could you talk to us about Alaska Airlines' next level of care, safety measures that have been implemented at SEA, and what Alaska Airline passengers should expect once again they choose to fly with your airline?
Yeah, sure. So as you may or may not be aware, we deployed a pretty aggressive communication strategy through the pandemic. Part of that was the next level care. And it really is a blog on Alaska's World outlining about over 100 measures that we've taken to enhance employee and guest safety. For example, we're changing and have changed the frequency and type of cleaning performed on our aircraft. We evaluated and implemented new technology to assist in that cleaning process. Obviously, masks are required for the duration of travel with Alaska. We have HEPA filters on our aircraft and also explain airflow on the aircraft. And it just so happens that over the weekend, we instituted what we call an Essential Clean Plus. And essentially what that is a certification of cleanliness. And you'll see this starting to be implemented across the country on our aircraft. And we worked with our medical directors from UW to validate our cleaning procedures and the implementation of what we did. And we have the cleaning crew on board that will actually sign off when an aircraft is clean and compliant with our expectations. So we want to build that confidence back up with guests. We do conduct enhanced cleaning on every turn, and it's an electrostatic spray that we perform. So it's ensuring the safety of our guests.
I'm assuming the protocols, you're looking not only just on the planes themselves, but within the airports also. So I see several of the lounges are reopening again.
Yes, absolutely. Great point. Yes. So we just opened up most of our lounges over the weekend as well on August 1st. And with that, we have instituted a frequency cleaning, a way that we can tell when a person has sat down in a chair, and we can clean that between each guest. And then there'll be periodic and frequent cleaning within that, as well as in the airports themselves. We've instituted a cleaning process where we're cleaning on a regular basis, and as likewise in between guests at the high touch point areas.
Well, it's great to hear all of this. It's definitely going to welcome a peace of mind to passengers as they return back to fly again. And you mentioned the confidence, it's a built of confidence again to want to travel. I was tongue in cheek a bit. It's it feels like being on a plane. You might be worried that it's going to be not the most safe place to be with COVID, but actually sounds like you're doing a pretty good job to make sure it is.
Yes, most definitely.
Gary, with Pike Brewing, it's located, as you mentioned, at the Pike Place Market, which is kind of the soul of Seattle tourism. As a director of restaurant operations, how do you foresee the future of dining in moving forward? I'm curious from sort of a positive take with the future of this sort of experience.
Well, it's, there are some positive things. I think the toughest part to get over is when will sales or when will revenue be back where it was before? So there are different ways that we can go about that, but there is a reality that getting back to where we were, especially in where the Pike Place market is and the amount of tourists that we have coming through, it's going to take a little while. I see changes in the way people eat and the way they order. I'm sure that all of you as well have ordered maybe a few more deliveries or picked up food a few more times. Or there's so many the new things with cook at home meal kits. We just announced a burger meal kit for 4. So you get actually the raw burger meat from Harlow Cattle Company right outside of Seattle. You get 4 macrina buns, you get a couple different salads, you get some fresh baked pretzels, you get a dessert, and you actually can cook it at home with your family. That's something that's just a new twist on, and you see a lot of chefs doing that out there now, where there are new things that you can do. You could do the seafood boil where you get the crab and the shrimp and the mussels, and they all come in a package with a pan, and you add water and our secret spices, and suddenly you have a great seafood boil for your family. So things like that, we're realizing we have to pivot and do to be able to keep the revenue coming in. To say something positive, I will tell you that one of our entrances, our back entrance on Post Alley, is right next to the gum wall, about 50 feet from the gum wall. And I've been there all week this week, and there's never been less than 20 to 30 people at the gum wall. So those are tourists. Those are seldom locals, and they're people that are down there. It's one of the most traveled sites for tourists to go, because also it's free. But having the people down there is really a positive outlook. I think this week we're going to open our brewery doors and just sell cold cans of beer. One of the new things for restaurants is you're allowed to sell cocktails and beer to go now. So we're just going to put a cooler out there with somebody and sell cold beers to people right there. So there are all different ways that you can pivot. But I think there are positive things to think about it. I just think that the hardest part is that to get to the revenue levels we used to be at could be a year from now or even longer than that. But
well, as a teenager from the 90s, the gum wall was someplace I went every weekend. So great that the gum is back and it draws attention, brings tourists in, and they'll be able to go and to your establishment. Do you see, like, even looking at dining in as like a seasonal thing now, like to have to pivot?
So I can give you a little bit of just insight from the last 4 days, right? Because we just opened on Friday. And honestly, I don't see any different. Of course, we're doing so much for safety and sanitation. But everybody that I've seen dining in is having a blast. I mean, everyone I've seen is enjoying their meal, enjoying their beers, enjoying the people they're with. Is it a little more difficult only with parties of 5 and having to split people up? And there are a lot of challenges that we're going through. But when I look into people's faces, people are enjoying it and people are having a good time. It's really tough to tell somebody that, you've got to stay inside and not hug anybody and not talk to anybody ever again. And so I feel like what I'm seeing is definitely happy locals and happy tourists as well. We just have to get through, these details.
When we chatted before today's episode, you mentioned kind of a feeling of entering new territory, being alone, but knowing that we're all in this together. Do you find yourself connecting with other restaurant owners or communicating with other restaurants around the city to share advice, share tips, make sure you're
sure,
all on the same page?
It's never been, I've always been a pretty friendly guy. So I've known a lot of people in the industry, but never as much as now, especially restaurants in the market and people that are around me or people that have similar interests. Everyone seems to be very good at talking to each other, telling each other, hey, what are your sales and how are you doing this and how are you controlling labor and how is your PPP loan going and how are you keeping insurance for your employees? We all have to struggle through that, and I feel like doing it alone doesn't make any sense. Everyone's going through the same thing.
Randy, could we go ahead and talk a little bit about the changes that have been made over at the Space Needle and Chihuly Garden and Glass? Go ahead and discuss, the steps that both locations have taken to ensure safety measures for not only your guests, but also your team members.
Yeah, absolutely. So our approach, it's a multi-layered approach. We call it elevating clean. And it's our whole philosophy is redundant layers of defense, right? We know, especially in an environment where, so much with this virus changes so quickly. I think as Matt mentioned, on a daily basis, we're tracking what's happening. So we know that it's not one technology or one protocol or one system that is going to keep our team members and our guests protected. It's layers and layers of defense. So what that means for us, right? Things like people is a layer, right? So identifying, every single guest and team member touch point and mitigating risk of that touch point is what we spent all of the month of April doing. Like, what is everything that a person can touch? How do we utilize our people to actually clean surfaces? Right, just like before, guest safety was at being a world famous icon. We always say safety is everybody's job. Cleanliness is now everyone's job as well. When you're on site, there's little stations everywhere where you can pick up a bottle of disinfectant and a microfiber cloth, and you can start wiping down surfaces. Process, I think, is a big piece of the program too, right? So SOPs around enhanced cleaning protocol, altering our guest flow, reducing capacity to support social distancing. Since 2012, we've actually had a time ticketing system that allows people to reserve the time that they come through. So there's not a big crowd at once. People are staggered throughout the day. So changing processes is layer 2. Layer 3 is policy. So, making sure we're adhering to federal, state, county, and city guidelines. We now have a cashless policy. So there is no cash exchanged at the Space Needle or Chihuly Garden Glass. We actually have free cash to card machines. So if someone does come with cash, they can convert it to a card that can be used at our location, anywhere that Visa or MasterCard is accepted, so that our staff aren't handling cash. Of course, all team members and guests must wear masks, and all ticketed guests, if they're not already wearing a face covering, which is state law, we actually have face coverings that we provide, which is just policy. I was not prepared to do this, but I can open one up. We worked with a local artist to design masks that actually have some fun, like, Seattle icons. So it's if you're going to be, here and enjoying your time and taking pictures, like, we want your mask to be like cute and fun so that you want to leave it on and you want it in photographs. And then sort of the beefiest layer, and the one that people like to talk about the most, even though, like, I believe, people, process, policy are all important parts, technology is the one that's been getting a lot of attention. So we actually had GeekWire come a few weeks ago just to highlight the $1 million investment we've made in technology. So our air handling systems all have UV light within them. We have hospital grade clean air inside both of our facilities. We use the atomized disinfectant sprayers that you've seen used that look like straight out of Ghostbusters. We have in our elevators, there's actually far UVC light that's, safe for people, that shines down on you while you're in the elevators. We actually have UVC portals that all of our guests, when they come into both facilities, they actually spin slowly in this, it's called a cleanse portal. For 20 seconds, it deactivates 90% of bacteria and viruses on people's clothing, baggage, and skin. And so the technology's gotten a lot of attention because it is cool, and it is, cutting edge, and it is very effective. The thing that we're really proud of, though, is, one day when we're past COVID-19, we'll still be a very, very clean facility in cold and flu season, in the visitors we welcome from all 50 states, that we welcome from over 100 countries every year to our facility. So it's still great. And then the final layer of clean is auditing, right? Like, again, everything changes so often. How do we regularly and through documentation have audits of our procedures? So right, every single day, we are our Matt, our compliance person sends out the update of, here's what worked today, here's what's not working today. We need action on this immediately. Our people are confused about this. Also, like, we've got the little black light. It looks like CSI over here sometime, where it's like we're doing audits of surfaces to, see, this needs more attention throughout the day. So it really is a multi-layered approach. And we actually launched a microsite similar to Alaska. It's spaceneedle.com/elevatingclean. And that's where we talk about sort of everything we're doing with our science-backed enhanced cleaning, safe air. The last thing I'll say on the sort of like technology piece, we actually have some of the only outdoor elevators in North America. And so they actually are outside the building. They draw in 100% fresh outdoor air. The air that they push out goes back into open air. Oh, and also that fresh air is treated through UV air handling system on board the elevator. And so we're very, it's very unique, where I think people before we opened, their number one concern was, what's the deal with the elevator? How much space am I going to have? What's the deal? And when we've been doing our intercepts afterward, we ask people, rate safety from 1 to 5, and we've been getting, consistently 5s and a few 4s. So it's been great feedback. We ask people what contributed to your, positive feelings about health and safety, and the elevator is actually one of the top things. They feel very safe and comfortable because in the elevator alone, there's 4 different things that work to keep our team members and our guests safe. So even if one of them isn't at 100% or isn't effective because of changes in the virus or changes in, we can't control people's behavior sometimes, right? So we're trying to do as much as possible to make sure we're as safe as we can be the majority of the time. So
my husband and I were able to join you for the pre-launch, for the testing, and allow your employees to kind of get used to these new protocols. And we've definitely felt safe. We enjoyed the whole time we were able to spend there. So, kudos to you for the total pivot. And I actually think it's fascinating, all of the implementations that you put in and the technology, and it kind of goes along with the whole space theme anyway.
I was going to say, yeah, right. We were literally born out of this idea and of, what's next in the future and the space race. And once we've, especially we just finished our $100 million renovation 2 years ago yesterday, actually, is when we sort of reopened the Space Needle. And our sort of next chapter is all about, it's less about 1962 and more about like 2062. It's less about going to the moon, it's more about going to Mars, right? And so it's like, it's actually very on brand for the Space Needle to have all this like cool tech gadgetry. It fits, but then people, when they go next door to Chihuly Garden and Glass, they see like, it even just makes sense over there because people have this expectation of, yeah, if there's not, a mask policy, and I think especially team members leading by example, our team members are all wearing masks and all doing the same thing. They're all going through the cleanse portal. They're all staying distance. So leading by example, and, they're universal, even though it happens to be on brand for the Space Needle. It's a universal message of elevating clean. So.
And the renovations are amazing. As a local who hadn't been to the Space Needle for a little while, I was so thrilled to welcome back. And, I definitely think that, anyone who lives in Seattle who is a native of this area, take advantage of this time and explore, our beautiful city and go up to the Space Needle for sure.
Oh, Joey, I think you got muted by accident.
I did. That's the first time I've done that. Hey, Tareya, are you there for a question from our listening audience?
Yes, I am. Thank you. I received a question about the airflow. Matt, can you explain the airflow on the airplanes?
Yeah, I'll give a high overview. So the airflow on aircraft, basically the air exchanges on an aircraft about once every 2 minutes. So about every 2 to 3 minutes, there's entirely new air that is on the aircraft. So we're bringing fresh air in from the outside at altitude, and we have to recirculate because there is less oxygen. We do have to recirculate the air, and that recirculation, as the airflow goes through our system, it does go through 2 HEPA filters prior to coming back out through your little air vent above your head. So it's a high volume air exchange that is occurring.
What about the recommendations when you get on the plane? I've heard that make sure you blast the nozzle, get the air flowing around you. Is that true, or is that?
We've been told that I always put it myself. I always put the airflow down over my face because the airflow on the aircraft does flow from top to bottom.
I'm gonna stick with you, Matt. but it's going to be a general question that's going to reach out to everybody. A hot button topic right now around COVID, of course, is the mask. I mean, particularly, in welcoming folks, back to your establishments and in the hospitality and tourism industry. What are the challenges that you've faced so far with the need of mask wearing? And if not yet, how will your teams be empowered to enforce these face coverings? And the reason why I wanted to stick with you, Matt, was, you have a combination of connecting with not only the passengers, but you have a connection with your employees as well. And so how making sure that the people on the plane who are part of Alaska Airlines staff are safe?
Yeah, it's an enormous challenge, quite honestly, when you're dealing with the public, with the amount of people coming through, as you can imagine. And I think Randy and Gary both can attest to this. There's varying opinions on this, and we always stick to the science and with our medical directors and working with them. And so what we've done is we educate, and that's, to Randy's point, I got excited when you started talking about layers, because we've taken that exact approach. And it's a multi-layered approach for us, and we look at the cleaning policies and then education and tracing. And the education piece for us is important for our employees, as well as communication with guests prior to them arriving. So they have the expectation and they know the expectation of the behaviors that are necessary in order to travel safely on us. So when a guest books and when they check in for a flight, they actually do receive, and you will go through a health assessment essentially, and then also the necessary requirements. And then if somebody is non-compliant on board, if they do take their mask off when they should still have it on, the flight attendant or crews will approach them, discuss with them that they do need to put it back on. And then we did get some coverage on our yellow card that we developed. So it's kind of a final warning for a guest, and they'll be handed a yellow card in soccer.
I love it. Great combination. I wish the Sounders were still in the tournament, so keep rooting for them. And also, on your website for the blog on Alaska Airlines, which is a great place to visit if you're going to continue to fly with Alaska. I highly recommend that. One of the news stories is, how to make your mask your BFF and get acquainted with it and make sure you know how to wear the mask accordingly, and there's no issues once you arrive to the airport and get on the plane. Love to go ahead and toss the same scenario question back to the other two. Randy, you're opening up. Any thoughts around the masks or folks going up the needle?
Yeah, I definitely. So as volume has increased over the last, every day we see a few more guests, and it definitely feels like a percentage of people need the warning. There's a certain point though where it's, we have a 3-strike policy here. Basically, if you are any of our hourly team members, you should only have to talk to a guest 2 times maximum about wearing their mask properly. The third time is a de-escalation with our guest safety team, where one of our, our security staff will basically come and say, at this time, we're going to need to refund your tickets and ask you to leave the facility. It's just sort of, there's a certain point where it's by coming in, it's similar to like no shoes, no shirt situation. If you are, we are open for people that are wearing masks properly. We are happy to welcome them and show them a great time, and we've been getting great feedback. Our facility is not actually open to people who aren't wearing masks or who won't comply with our policy. The same goes for physical distancing. If people aren't, following the posted, it's very much like the airline, the lighted signs and posted placards of our facility. If you aren't complying with those, you actually aren't welcome in our facility, and we're going to ask you to leave. And the biggest thing that we see, and I know this is pretty widespread, is most of our staff, now that I've opened up this mask, most of their day is spent with these people, with the nose people. And we do a lot of our staff throughout the day do this motion a lot of actually, if you could bring that back up, especially at the Space Needle, we're a very vertical experience. So we're going to need you to bring your mask vertical as well. But yeah, it definitely is it's a percentage of of folks. And, you know, similar to Alaska, you know, and like Gary was mentioning down at the market, you know, we see people from all over. You know, over half of our visitors are from out of state. You know, there are people who are trying to escape high case numbers in their area or escape triple-digit temperatures in their area when they find out that Seattle is 70, they're getting the Seattle summer secret, right? That it's 75 and not humid here, and they want to come escape. And, you know, I have personally, you know, conflicting feelings. I feel, you know, it's challenging that people are traveling, but we're able to hire back more team members and be open by welcoming in guests so long as we can do it safely. And we get to interact with guests every day that are, you know, I was talking on Thursday with a couple from Tulsa. It was their 12th wedding anniversary. They have not taken a vacation without their kids in over 7 years, and they've always wanted to go to Seattle. And they were like, we're just going to do it, and we'll just follow all the guidelines on the aircraft and at our hotel and at the places we choose to visit and at restaurants, and we'll try to have the safest experience possible and not be a risk, you know, to ourselves or other people. And they had a fantastic time, and it actually like fed the soul a little bit of like, you know, in the hospitality and tourism industry, the reason we do what we do is to like put a smile on people's face, right? And to like create memories for them and their families. So it's great that we can do that, but we can only do that if people mask up. You know, we literally have a flag flying from the Space Needle that says mask up, because the correlation between masking up and businesses opening up is so strong that we just want to continue to be an advocate for that however we can be.
Well, I definitely get a smile on my face every time I see that design on that mask. I have to make my way back to the Space Needle so I can get one for sure. And of course, we want to hear from you, Gary, as well. Kind of a little bit different, you know, with restaurants and, you know, people have to dine. You take your mask off, and, you know, granted, you've only been for the weekend so far. And how did things go with the, you know, with masks?
I think one of the things that we're really thankful for is when Governor Inslee mandated masks. And was very specific with restaurants, because it allows us, when we explain to guests that it's not us, it's although we would also mandate it, it's the law. And so it simply is the law. So there's really no question of whether you can be here without a mask or not. And the law is that if you're at your table eating and drinking, you don't have to have it. If you get up to use the restroom, you do. I think the other good point is that if somebody comes in, you know, and they see that you take sanitation and cleanliness seriously, and this is not a place where you walk into a bar and you think, oh, do they really care? Let me take my mask down, or let me take it off of my nose. If they see that, if you go to the Space Needle, for instance, and you're turning around for 20 seconds in the UV light, they take it seriously. Put your mask on, mask up. You know, we don't quite have $1 million to put into PPE, but what we do is we have a huge bell, a huge brass bell that every 30 minutes on the hour and on the half hour, we ring it throughout the restaurant. And as soon as we do, every staff member finishes the task they're doing and takes 3 minutes to sanitize all surfaces. They take their gloves off, wash their hands, and change their gloves. Our guests hear the bell and they see what's happening. And so when they see you're taking that seriously, I think it makes people just react a little bit differently. So we haven't seen much over the last 4 days. Maybe a couple people. I think we struggle a little more with the tourists that have come into town. There are plenty of groups that have 6 people and 8 people and of 9 people, you know, and it's very strict in dining that it is at a 5 or less per table, and that tables have to be 6 feet apart. And it's not from table edge to table edge. It's from guests, the back of one guest to the back of another guest. It's a really long ways. And so the more challenges we've seen really is getting those groups to split up or not have somebody walking around the restaurant. I'm not sure if you know, but one of the newest mandates that was clarified was that you can't be standing in a bar or restaurant. So you can't, you can be standing while you're in line, but as soon as you have your food or have your beer, you can't stand somewhere or walk from table to table. You have to take your food and beer, and you need to sit down at a table that is designated okay to sit down in. And that's it. So that's more the difficult part. Is we're a fun place to be, and there's stuff all over our walls, and, you know, people want to look around and walk around with their beer. And if they have their beer, they don't have their mask on. And so that's more of what we've been looking through.
And it seems like a little bit of not only for an education that you have to give to your customers that come in, because especially if they're tourists, they don't know what our particular rules or laws are here in King County or throughout Washington State, and, you know, what phase we're in. So I love the idea of the bell too. My mind went straight to just like the throwing the fish and the yelling before they do that, and like it gets everyone's attention. I don't know, it sort of makes it like So it gives a little levity to this situation.
And just to jump in, Joey, I think to like perfectly on point with what Gary was saying was like, you don't need, you know, our sort of ownership and our direction was that we want to make a long-term investment, but literally like a bell does not cost $1 million. When you think about the layers, it's all about the policies and your procedure and what people do. Those are far more impactful, like for immediacy, right? This program is called Rapid Response. Like, what can you do right now to like build a culture of cleanliness and safety? It's things like the bell. The other thing that we've noticed in our intercepts and surveys, when we ask people what made you feel safe, they always talk about things that they saw staff doing, right? We saw the second we finished using a ticket kiosk, someone was wiping it down, right? I bet if you look at, you know, Yelp reviews of Gary's establishment, that people are going to say things like, we felt very comfortable, the staff took it seriously, there was a visual and auditory like response to cleanliness, and people respond well to that, right? It's both like a practical good policy, but it's also a great marketing asset too, of like, you want people talking about how they felt going to your establishment.
Sure.
Like
optics
also
are important.
Go ahead.
Oh, the optics are important, exactly.
Yeah, like making that connection with your customer or your passenger, and making them feel like you're on the same page together and doing this, and not just something you've thrown upon them to have to do in order to come to your establishment. It's, I don't know, that the give and take. There's a partnership between, you know, the business and the customer. In recent events that have been happening around Seattle, they've been hard on tourism, and particularly with COVID and the portrayal of violence in the streets surrounding Black Lives Matter and the murder of George Floyd, among others. King County has been seen as a hotspot for both, and with first initial case, you know, in the state for the virus, as you alluded to earlier, Randy, and then of course the creation of CHOP, you know, up on Capitol Hill, which is Seattle's historically LGBTQ neighborhood. Beyond COVID precautions, what are your organizations finding the need to do to promote additional means towards, you know, safety within Seattle? It's an open question. Anyone can jump in.
I mean, I can kick things off. You know, I think for us, it's always been something, especially in the past 10 years, just the way that Seattle's boomed, that, you know, we pay close attention to, and we want to be, you know, supportive of people that are experiencing homelessness and help them get the resources that they need. Because, you know, I think it's no surprise. I mean, people know, right, that some of the world's richest people live in Seattle. And so it's frustrating that we have problems like this. But then I know in the hospitality and tourism industry, what we're passionate about is showing off everything that we love about this place that we live. So we're always talking with guests about their concerns about, you know, safety. And, you know, fortunately for us, Seattle, when you compare it to other major cities, is among the safest major cities in America. And so we often just point people back to, you know, what should I do when I come to Seattle? I hear it's dangerous. I hear. And we always just point back to resources from folks like Visit Seattle that have great statistics and resources of, you know, the same precaution you would take in any major city, you should take in Seattle, right? Don't go to places you're unfamiliar with and at night by yourself, you know, don't go through a dark alley by yourself wearing headphones buried in your phone, right? Go to places that are well lit with a group and be aware of your surroundings, and don't be flaunting don't make yourself a target for these things, because Seattle, you know, a friend of mine who I grew up with here who now lives on the East Coast and gets to see Seattle's growth from afar, she's like, Seattle's growing up and becoming a real city, right? That's then it's informing people of that. The last thing I'll say, even just recently, talking to the 61% of our guests that are, you know, from out of state, they're focused on the positive. They're having a great time. I've had multiple people, a couple from Texas and a woman who's traveling solo from Florida, who specifically said, like, I guess I shouldn't believe everything I watch on TV, right? Because we walked down to the market, we walked the waterfront, and we came here and we staying in a downtown hotel, and everything, is everything, right? There's businesses boarded up, but she was like, I didn't know if that was because of COVID or because of protests. I know it's very different sort of at Seattle Center than, there's not nightly demonstrations around our neighborhood like there is up on the hill. So I can only speak from our perspective, but I think people are focused on the positive, and our job is to educate people about just sort of what's happening here in Seattle and not have them, seeing is believing, and coming and experiencing and seeing Seattle for themselves is really what is, we think, the most important. So.
Yeah, I think he's a really, really good point. I think especially what people are feeling about Seattle now, and obviously we're a progressive, liberal city. And I think that, I think all of us have had calls from relatives or friends that have really thought that we actually lived in CHOP, or that our whole city was taken over, or, things like that. I think that one thing Pike has done a really good job at is we still have our values and what we believe. And if you come to Pike Brewing Company, you're going to still see a 6-foot Black Lives Matter flag, and you're going to see a trans flag, and you're going to see a pride flag. And with all of the tourists that we have coming from around the country, that's not cool for everybody. And we're okay with that, and that's a pretty tough thing to say in the time when revenue is really important, where we're doing 20% of the sales we did day to day versus last year. But it is important. It is part of our city, and that's what we do. And we want to make sure that we represent who we are. And a lot of large corporations don't have they just don't have they're not able to do that. But being privately owned, we can do that.
Gary, what are your hours? Or are you able to make reservations right now, or are there just walk-ins?
You can make reservations through Resi, and then we're open from 11 a.m. to 9 during the week, and then till 10 on the weekends.
Do you know if any of those restricted platforms they are capping for 5 so that people know that that's?
We're able to do that at the restaurant level. So we are our system only takes up to 5. So we're able to cap those.
Cool.
Yep. But we have plenty of rooms. So that's one of our benefits is that our pub is 12,000 square feet. So even if we're only 30 to 40% occupied, that's still about 130 to 150 people. So we're lucky to have such a big space in that restaurant. And then we hope to open the second restaurant in another month or so. It's really tough, Joey, to decide whether it's right to open, right? Like, I don't think that anybody in this call, when they opened their facility back or what we're doing is necessarily comfortable with 100%. You really have to think should we be open? All of us think that in the back of our mind is it right to be open? But then it's about revenue, and then it's about staying in business. And is it right to close our business? Well, you kind of have to, in the middle there somewhere, decide that, what, it's right to open our business if we're 100% focused on safety and on those levels, and making sure that we're making it as safe as possible for our guests and our team. And that's really kind of where we're at. And it's exciting to finally be at the point where we can do that.
And I think it's important to over communicate. Like, this is the time to make sure all of your precautions are out there and people are aware. Before it was great, and it still is, making sure individuals know, your establishment might have, an all gender bathroom. So that's good to get that information out there. It's good to let them know, your cleaning protocols and what you've put in so far. So they want to choose your establishment, to go to. Even when we're looking at, wanting to connect with family or friends at this time, we're already questioning what our level of security is to be able to do that. So now to add another level of going to a business, it adds more need for research and education with those precautions. Here's a quick question. If a vaccine is created and society begins to, definitely ease back even more, what pivots in tourism industry do you see sticking around? But Matt, I'd love to know, for the airlines, what sort of protocols do you see that you weren't doing before that you think are going to be okay, we should have been doing this pre-COVID?
That is a fantastic question. We have had conversations specifically about this. And I think what we're going to see is a continued effort in cleaning. I think that is something that the public now expects, that will also help. I think it was alluded to earlier in normal flu and cold season, that type of cleaning and that level of cleaning is going to help protect people. And that really is what it's about. So that's where I would see, if masks do tend to fall off or no longer necessary, I think the cleaning portion of that is really going to be the one that's going to stick around.
Gary, what about restaurants? Do you see like even more the need for like reservations or getting things done more on phone, or ways to use that sort of technology to even order your food down the road?
So yeah, so we started something really kind of cool this last week, and we actually have, so we decided our new service model doesn't involve servers. So we don't have actual servers anymore. There's a portion of our restaurant where you can order at the bar, and then we'll give you a number and we'll order the food out to you. But our main dining room now is all contactless ordering and payment, which I think is going to stick with us through after all of this. You actually, when the host greets you, they actually take your phone number and enter it into the iPad. And then on the way to the table, it actually will, you'll get sent a link, a link. Once you sit down, you open that link and you put your payment information in, and then you order, then the whole menu is there. So you're able to order everything off of the menu from your phone. The only contact we have with you is when we come out and run the food and drop it off. If you want an additional, your tab is never closed until the end. So if you want an additional round of beers, you can order 4 more beers, and then those will just come in and get run out to you. So it's great for labor costs as well, but also really kind of a cool technology that people are able to use. It's great for COVID times, but it's also pretty cool all the time. You know, you have it all right there on your phone, and you can do it yourself.
Yeah, I've already gone to other locations where like the use of QR codes, and that's how you get the updated menu and the specials that are going through. Randy, you sort of alluded to it earlier. You know, the timed entry seems like that's going to take off even greater and down the road.
Yeah, so when we opened Chihuly Garden and Glass in 2012, that's when we moved the Space Needle to timed entry. So for our first 50 years, you bought a ticket, you waited in line. If that line took 3 hours, you just stood in a line with a bunch of people for 3 hours, and that's how you spent your vacation. You weren't down at the market. You weren't, going and getting out on the water. You were standing in line at the Space Needle. It does not sound like a nice time. And even, pre-COVID, if there were a 3-hour wait, our policy was guests could show up, make a reservation. You just show up at that time, and we have people sort of come metered throughout the day, and it keeps everyone go do something else for 3 hours and come back at your time. It's like the fast pass at Disneyland. And so for us, one of the requirements, when you look for museums and attractions and places to get reopened, is to have some sort of reservation-based time ticketing. So we were already sort of ahead of the game with that, and that's been a great thing for our guests in the past, and we'll keep it going. The funny thing is, right, guests can come now and have a totally touch-free experience at both attractions if they want. They don't have to touch anything. They don't have to touch a door. They don't have to even hand a ticket to a person to scan. That person is now stationed at turnstiles where you scan your ticket, and it's like a big glass subway gate that opens up. That's actually something we had in development to launch this summer anyway, just because it is a better guest experience. It's technological, right? So things like that will stay put. Going cashless is definitely something I think will keep moving forward. Right, you saw it, 3 or 4 years ago on the airlines where it's sort of plastic only when you're in the skies. I think the same thing's sort of here already. If you looked at the data, over 90% of our transactions were using card anyway. And so you look at, if you tell people in advance, you can probably get that, of the 10% that we're using cash, you can probably get half of that to disappear, and you still have people that are going to show up. And as long as we have a free option for them to convert cash to card, we feel good. So I'd say from a policy thing, cashless is probably the biggest thing that'll stick with us post-COVID, and continuing doing mobile ticketing. But I think, like I mentioned earlier, so much of what we've done is behind the scenes investment anyway. We're not going to deinstall the UV air handling system. It's already in place. It's going to be there in the future. Like Matt was talking about, enhanced cleaning, right? I think especially early on, I know for me, I was looking at some other airlines, not Alaska, who were saying, here's everything that we're doing. And then it would tip off a little thing in the back of your mind, like, wait, you weren't doing this before, right? And so I think the guests have an expectation of that level of cleanliness moving forward. We don't want to be in a position where we say, all right, we're not doing nightly disinfecting anymore. No, like it's still a good thing for health and safety overall. So probably, yeah, things like masks, if those went away, great. If the sort of space and capacity was able to increase, when we're in a sort of post-COVID or a vaccine world, that's all great. But yeah, definitely cleaning, cashless, digital ticketing, all those things we think are here to stay for sure.
Well, I love the whole concept too with all these pivots, just creating a personal experience for everyone now. And so, excuse me, Matt, but it's like first class for all. When you attend these things, like you get that extra connection with what's being provided. So I'm excited for that for the future, definitely for sure. What current advice might each of you have for, the hospitality and tourism industry as they look into reopening? This is kind of a chance for you to, what you've learned or seen so far, and what sort of advice would you give folks?
I can jump in first. I think for me, it's find someone who operates a similar business and who's already open, and take them out for coffee over Zoom. I think for us, we had our whole protocol, all the investment, we're doing all this. You don't know everything, right? Our whole assumption that was we were going to open on day one and be wrong and learn from our guests and learn from our team members. In the weeks before we opened, right, the Seattle Aquarium opened about 4 weeks before us. I made a phone call and, got to talk with Tim, who's my counterpart down there, and ask the question, what were the things that you didn't expect or didn't see? And it helps you think about, get even more ready. A great example, they had someone who took off their mask to drink some water, I believe, in an outdoor area, and their mask fell on the ground or flew away or something. Now they're halfway through the experience that has a one-way path and there's no mask, right? So it's we should have some extra masks located throughout the facility. And so, right, that was before we opened, I could even say, hey, it's a great idea. Thanks to our friends at the aquarium, we should have some masks upstairs in case something happens to someone's masks, if a loop breaks, just so that we're not we have someone going around maskless. So I would say just ask someone, if you're a restaurant, talk to a restaurant that's been open. If you're a hotel, talk to a hotel that's been open. They're living this every day, and they can help you probably, figure out what is going to be the actual reality of opening versus what you're losing too much sleep over needlessly. So.
Cool. I completely agree with that. When we were getting ready to open, I immediately called Fremont Brewing, right? We already know they went through that whole situation where they had to close down because someone tested positive, and, sat down with them and just talked through everything that they did. That has helped me immensely. The other thing that I would give it as advice is, we're in a situation where you're bringing back less employees than you had most generally. Bring back the best ones and the ones that get it. It's an opportunity to bring back people that are dedicated to cleanliness and dedicated to sanitation, and that understand that you're a team now. Our staff is much less than it was before. And so teamwork and the ability to pivot throughout your shift and take things seriously has been huge. And it's actually been a pleasure over the last week working with the team that you have all of your best people. And I think that's an important thing to do.
Yeah, and for us as essential workers, our employees have been on the front lines since we haven't sent people home for the most part at airports. But one suggestion I would make is if there is an opportunity to, before bringing employees back, talk to them about what their concerns are and what their expectations are. We have found as some employees have come back, their expectations might be a little bit different, and they have great ideas on how to become safer. Likewise, if you have the opportunity or potential to talk with guests and customers on what their expectations are, to be able to meet those.
Definitely. So for sure, listen to your staff, listen to your guests, and, be flexible. It's a whole new world, and we're all in this, together for sure. On behalf of GSBA, I want to thank everybody who joined us today. Special thank you to our guest panel for sharing all of your viewpoints around safe return to hospitality and tourism here in Seattle and throughout Washington. Be sure to visit traveloutseattle.com to connect with GSBA hospitality and tourism members as we all navigate this path of reopening. Under the Travel Out Seattle You Belong tab, you can stay engaged with us where we place tips and articles and how to be safe in Seattle. It's a great blog posting that we have going on. Just a quick plug for something new that's happening with GSBA. Has your business experienced financial loss and hardship due to COVID-19 impact, a pandemic? If so, we want you to know about Ready for Business Fund. It's here to help your business bounce back. GSBA and Comcast Washington have co-created the Ready for Business Fund to support small businesses. It's a $2,500 cash grant that will be awarded to select small businesses. The grant is open to any small business in Washington state established prior to March 2nd, 2020. Priority will be given to small businesses within the communities most impacted by COVID-19, which include LGBTQ, BIPOC, and women-owned businesses. Application information can be found at thegsba.org and closes Friday, September 4th, 2020. Our next GSBA Rapid Response will be on Tuesday, August the 18th at 10 a.m. Stay tuned for topic details by visiting GSBA event page or following GSBA on Facebook. Thank you all, and we will see you next time.